You know, there isn't a week that goes by without someone stopping me to talk about Jim O'Brien, the host of so many 6 ABC Thanksgiving Day parades throughout the years. And despite the fact that I never had the privilege of meeting him, boy, I'm glad they do, because I love the way people's eyes light up when they think about him. 30 years after his death, Jim O'Brien remains a towering figure in this city, in all of television, and in this newsroom. Thanksgiving in Philadelphia means turkey and football and, yes, the parade.
So here we are, gang. 61st annual Thanksgiving Day parade going strong.
For years, Jim O'Brien brought it to your living room. But Jim was a man who wore lots of hats, and in each, he was lovable and he was loved.
What do you mean by that? You little devil.
From 1976, the year he joined Action News, to 1983, the year he tragically died, Jim O'Brien was television. It was a career, though, born behind a different microphone, as Jim first rocked this city on the radio, a DJ with a certain flair.
You know I love him, Stevie, in a Superstition song at WFIN.
I know that everything he did with gusto, you know, and I know that Philadelphia was so close to his heart.
Recognize her? Perry Gilpin starred as Roz on the hit TV show Frasier, but one of this actress's most prized roles was the one she was born with. Perry is Jim O'Brien's daughter, and for the first time, she's speaking to us about her dad.
I think he was one of those guys that was just on, and he loved it. I mean, he did find his bliss. He found where he wanted to be, which is wonderful.
Jim famously began his TV career here with Dialing for Dollars, produced by Art Moore, now production manager for Live with Kelly and Michael. A keen eye for talent, Art knew his best friend had it.
As talented as he was, there's no doubt in my mind he would have continued to grow and develop, and who knows where that potential could have led.
And so Jim quickly made the move into news here at Channel 6, anchoring at noon and at 5 p.m. In that role, viewers saw a more serious side of the man, and a clearly sensitive one. When thousands of people filled Logan Square to watch Pope John Paul II say Mass, it was O'Brien who brought it home.
He's an amazing man in so many different ways.
And when the shuttle Columbia launched into space, it was Jim who beamed us back to pictures. All of that made Jim's well-known zany side something to savor.
And now that we've lost you completely, let me get you back with some plain old garbage about the weather thing. All right, gang? Here we go.
Weather forecasting was decidedly low-tech then, but Jim had his pointer and his clouds.
A goose bumper, to be sure. Let's call it boomers and give you a little bit of an explanation.
Yes, on camera was where Jim belonged and spent most of his time. But in the years before his death, his free time was occupied by another passion, skydiving, which he fell in love with while filming a TV segment.
First jump is a real moment.
And there would be many more, until his 814th jump, the day his chute didn't open. But before his death, Jim reflected on his life and the connection he made with viewers that lives on even 30 years later.
What I figure is that they trust me, they believe me in whatever role I am. They say, that's Jim O'Brien. And he's doing what he always does. He's trying to tell us something. He's trying to communicate with us. And that's the bottom line.
And that's the bottom line. A life well lived. And tomorrow on Action News at 4, we're going to hear more from Perry Gilpin. His daughter, who as mentioned, spoke with us for the first time. So emotional, still after 30 years. And I want to share this with you. Pretty incredible thing. This was Jim O'Brien's last magnetic cloud. He delivered this on his last forecast here before he died. It said brilliant, dated September of 1983, and I think it's a perfectly appropriate way to remember the man because he too was brilliant. And I know that from having researched this story and from having heard from so many of you over the years that I've been here about what a great man he was.
And I think that's the same thing. I mean, when I meet people, his name comes up more than not about the unique ways that he presented the weather. And I think only he could do those unique ways, you know what I mean, because he got away with pretty much anything he wanted to get away with.
Well, if you were alive and old enough to remember television in 1983, then you no doubt remember Jim O'Brien there. As we showed you here yesterday, he was a legend on Channel 6. His life, though, cut short by a tragic skydiving accident 30 years ago. To many of you, he remains an unforgettable and a towering figure. The same is true for his daughter, Perry, and for our very own Jim Gardner, both of whom remember him in an even more personal way. For an entire generation of Philadelphians, September 25th, 1983 is a date that won't be forgotten. As the newspaper headlines declared in bold-faced type, it's the day this city lost a legend. And word of Jim O'Brien's untimely death hit hard. Viewers looked to Jim Gardner, O'Brien's friend and colleague, to try to make sense of it.
And what is now painful grief will become a series of wonderful memories.
What we tried to do as best we could was to tell what happened and to unavoidably convey our feelings. And it was unavoidable because most of us were crying.
When he passed away, it became really clear how popular he was there.
At the time, O'Brien's daughter, Perry Gilpin, was living in Texas. She was aware, of course, that her father was famous here. But as she tells us, for the very first time, she had no idea just how many lives he'd touched.
Jim put his heart and soul into his job every time that red light went on.
To see a city mourning your dad, you know, it's pretty overwhelming. And but what I loved about it was everyone expressed themselves so beautifully.
A fitting tribute to a man whose own expressions remain the stuff of legend in this town.
A place called Prescott, Arizona, not far from the putrefied forest. 10 inches of rain in 24 hours.
Perry's clearest memories of her father take her back to Dallas and Jim's early days as a radio DJ. His studio smack in the middle of a drive-in movie theater.
My mom, my sister, and I would go and watch him do his show from a booth, you know, right there while people were getting their popcorn, you know, so great.
And as she tells it, he relished that role. Maybe that's when the showman in Jim O'Brien was born. But something else, something deeper, came first.
He started out as a theologian. He was a pastor. I was born when he was at Baylor University, and he wanted to be a pastor, but I think that there was something about people he needed to connect.
And connect he did, though his career took a different path. Famous in her own right for her role as Roz on the sitcom Frasier, it's not lost on Perry that her dad's legacy would seep into her own career.
His best friend called me up and said, "I can't believe you're sitting in a radio station with earphones on your head. Oh my God."
The apple did not fall far from the tree. As Perry says, Jim O'Brien bloomed where he was planted.
He was inspirational to so many people and so supportive to so many people who go on to talk about him, and that's a successful life.
He taught me so many valuable lessons, and I think he made the kind of impact on an audience that comes around once in a couple of generations.
We're very proud of him, and we're glad you're proud of him too.
You know, Jim talks about that impact that he made, and of course we all mentioned yesterday that we continue to hear about it week in and week out. And one of the wonderful things about putting this story together is the sort of stories that you've been telling us on our Facebook page. So I encourage you, I'll be putting these stories, both of them, on my Facebook page just as soon as this newscast is over. Go there, share your stories with each other, and share those stories for a generation of people that are only meeting Jim O'Brien now through this tribute to him 30 years later.
And what a gift to have his daughter and Jim.
Yeah.
Tell us something about a man that we never got an opportunity to meet.
Actually meet,
Yeah,
you know, and the social media now, it's a great outlet for folks to tell them their stories, for us to read as well.
We're seeing that happen.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Jim O'Brien would have some colorful words to say about the weather
Yes.
that we're going to deal with overnight tonight and during the day tomorrow. I will refrain and just say it's going to be yucky.